Welcome back to the Legal Brief, the show where we crush the various legal myths and misinformation surrounding various areas of the gun world. I'm your host, Adam Kraut, and today we're talking about the different types of FFLs that one could have.
TacPack offers a monthly supply drop of gear shipped right to your door. Featuring things like knives, gun parts, and survival gear, you'll be sure to find something you love. If you order right now, you can get either a free knife or a free tourniquet by using the code TGCKNIFE or TGCTQ at TacPack.com.
As you may remember from the recent video I did on who needs an FFL, where we discussed who needs an FFL when dealing in firearms, I mentioned that there were other instances where an individual or company could need an FFL. There's actually 9 different types of FFLs that exist. The first type is the second most prominently issued license with over 56,000 active licensees as of 2015. A Type 1 FFL is issued to individuals or entities who are engaged in the business of dealing in firearms other than destructive devices. So exactly the kind of license that we were talking about in the recent episode. This would account for a large majority of gun shops and kitchen table FFLs. These FFLs can buy and sell Title I firearms to customers, take firearms in on consignment, and perform gunsmithing services. And guys, I know I cover a lot of different technical terms, but if you have questions like, what's a Title I firearm? Go check out the playlist on YouTube. For the answer to that question, you'd want to check out the episode called National Firearms Act Explained. Type 2 FFLs are issued to pawnbrokers. While it allows for the pawnbroker to do exactly what a Type 1 FFL can do, it does have another advantage to those that are operating as pawnbrokers. Unlike a Type 1 FFL, who cannot dispose of a handgun to a non-resident of a state where the license is located, a Type 2 FFL can return a handgun to a non-resident who pawned it there. So say John had taken a trip down to Florida and pawned his Deagle for that jet ski he really wanted to buy. Unlike at a Type 1 FFL where he would have had to sell it to him, rebuy it, and ship it back to an FFL in his state, at a Type 2 FFL, he could have the firearm returned to him, assuming he could cough up the cash for that awesome gun.
It was a sweet jet ski, though.
A Type 3 FFL is for a collector of curios and relics. These are the most prevalent licenses available with over 60,000 active licenses as of 2015. These are granted to individuals who collect C.F.R. firearms. We'll cover those separately in a different episode. A Type 6 FFL is issued to a manufacturer of ammunition for firearms other than destructive devices, or armor-piercing ammunition. These licensees can produce ammunition that is commercially available for you to purchase. So you know that guy at the gun show who's selling his reloads? More often than not, that person's likely not licensed. And based on the law and ATF's position pertaining to being engaged in the business, they likely should be. A Type 7 FFL is issued to a manufacturer of firearms other than destructive devices. A Type 7 can do everything a Type 1 can, in addition to actually manufacturing guns. While not necessarily intuitive, ATF considers the mere assembly of parts to constitute manufacturing, if those parts are owned by the licensee. So, for example, if you as a licensee have an AR-15 lower receiver in your inventory, and you assemble that lower, you've just manufactured a firearm. Take a complete AR-15 receiver and attach an upper to it, again, you've just manufactured a firearm, and you would need to be a Type 7 to do so. And this license specifies that you cannot manufacture a destructive device. Speaking of destructive devices, it covers a broad category of things, but you can mostly think of them as anything that kind of goes boom, like a grenade. It does also include anything with a bore diameter greater than ½ an inch. This is why guns like the Street Sweeper and the U.S.C 12 are now regulated as DDs rather than regular shotguns. And for those of you scratching your heads wondering why most 12-gauge shotguns are not DDs, the definition excludes shotguns the Secretary finds particularly suitable for sporting purposes, like your duck gun. The last 4 license types are the least common. These include a Type 8 importer of firearms other than destructive devices, or ammunition for firearms other than destructive devices, or ammunition other than armor-piercing ammunition. The Type 9 dealer in destructive devices, the Type 10 manufacturer of destructive devices, ammunition for destructive devices, or armor-piercing ammunition, and lastly, the Type 11 importer of destructive devices, ammunition for destructive devices, or armor-piercing ammunition. As you may have guessed, the Type 08 allows for the importation of firearms which are not destructive devices, the importation of ammunition for firearms which are not DDs, or the importation of ammunition which is not armor-piercing. So to import things that don't go kaboom and aren't armor-piercing, you need a Type 8 license. The remaining 3 license types deal with destructive devices. As of 2015, there were only 66 licensees in the entire country which were licensed to deal in DDs. Given that most people aren't buying destructive devices, this isn't really surprising. There were far more manufacturers of DDs or their ammunition and importers of DDs and their ammunition rather than actual dealers. As it's likely most of the sales are for law enforcement and military, the lack of licenses isn't necessarily unexpected. As you may have noticed, we did not cover special occupation taxpayers or SOTs in this episode. For instance, the ultra-common 0702, the 02 being related to the SOT, but we'll talk more about them in the future when we discuss dealing in NFA firearms. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the different types of licenses that are out there. If you guys like this episode, you know what to do. Hit that like button and share it around with your friends. Have a question you want answered on the show? Head on over to the Legal Brief section on theguncollective.com. Don't forget to like The Gun Collective on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Full30, Snapchat, and wherever else you can catch us on social media. And as always, thanks for watching.
The shirts worn in today's episode of The Legal Brief have been provided by Patriot Patch. Click the link in the description to learn more.